Hello, welcome back to another episode from Tech Life Stories. On the podcast today, I have Sean Burkinshaw. Sean has spent the past 35 years working for BT in a variety of roles, working his way up from a customer service engineer to head of change management and ITIL Specialist, and is now the current role of a senior manager in governance and insights. He has a whole host of certifications, including ITIL Full and Certified Scrum Master, and he's a member chair at the ITSMF for London and the South East region. Sean, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm very well, Con. Thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for jumping online with me. It's great to have you on. I always start the show by asking the same question. How did you get into the crazy world of IT?
Oh, very good question. I probably got a crazier answer if I'm honest.
Oh, go for it.
Um, so I spent the first 12 years of my career climbing telegraph poles, and then I went out onto one of the moors in South Yorkshire looking for
Hmm.
downed World War II bombers. That's been in the
Wow.
days before Google Maps and Google Earth when you could just do it from your computer. And I broke my foot. So I managed to hobble back to the car and I got 6 weeks off work because you can't climb a telegraph pole with a broken foot. And I did what most people would do. I signed up to an IT course at college because I had no idea how to use a computer and I thought it looked interesting.
Yeah.
And I took to it like a duck to water. Really, really enjoyed it. And that's why I decided to make a career change into IT. Purely by chance, um, I, I decided to do a college course. I passed it and absolutely loved it. So that was the reason for the career change all those years ago.
All those years ago, and all because of you falling down from a telegraph pole and breaking your foot.
Exactly that.
Do you think you would have
Yep.
stuck with that job at the time if you hadn't if that hadn't have happened?
Yeah, probably. I quite enjoyed it. I had no reason to move, but I found something by pure coincidence. I found something that I enjoyed and I thought I was better at. So yeah, I
Yeah.
moved into IT. Well, I tried to get a job in IT straight away after that.
Okay. So you've done the course. What was the course? Was it specific at all, or was it like a generalist IT type course?
Oh, it was the basics of turning the computer on. I literally knew nothing.
Okay.
Um, yeah, the basics of turning the computer on, word processing, a bit of Excel, a bit of Access database. It was the very basic. I got there on day one and I genuinely didn't know how to turn it on.
Okay. Okay. And was your very because obviously in the bio there I mentioned you've been at BT for 35 years. Was that literally your very first role, or did you work anywhere else previously?
No, no, that was my very first role, straight out of
It
school.
was.
Yeah,
Okay.
16
All
years
right.
old, straight out of school.
16 years old, straight out of school, you're at BT, like what I would have thought like a entry level type IT role, um, training and development on site at the same time, or kind of throw you in at the deep end.
Bit of both. So my first job was a software developer, which I
Hmm.
have to be honest, I wasn't very good at. Um, I went on a sponsored degree and dropped out after a year because it was too hard, if I'm being perfectly honest.
Okay.
So I learned mostly from the team that I joined. They were all software developers, very good, and I spent a lot of time sat with them, literally sat at their desk learning the trade. I also spent a lot of time out on the road gathering user requirements, so it was kind of a rounded role. I wasn't just sat in an office typing code away. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it was very much on the job training with a little bit of kind of college at the side.
Okay. Okay. And then when did you realise that the software development kind of role wasn't really for you?
Um, I got excuse me, I got an opportunity to work in support,
Hmm.
which I quite fancied. It was for the health service. So BT ran the health service contract at the time, and I was looking for a bit of a change. I'd done quite a lot of coding and kind of launched some applications, but I was looking for a bit of a change. And yeah, a friend of mine had got a job working with the NHS and said, "Do you fancy it, Sean? It's 12-hour shifts, 4 days on, 4 days off. I think your skills would be suitable." So yeah, I had a very, very informal interview and started a few weeks later.
And when you say support role, are we talking about like a service desk type role, or are we talking about a more second line? What was it, or a bit of
It
mix?
was it was second line, third line application support.
Second and third line application support. Okay, all right. And would you say once you started that role, that was a better suited role to you compared to the software development role you were doing previously?
Absolutely loved it. Absolutely
What
loved
what
it.
what what would you say were the kind of like key differences between those two roles?
Well, I think when you're developing software, you kind of launch it and people use it or don't use it. There's no kind of specific customer touch points. When you work in support, you've got a customer at the end of it who's having issues, who's unable to do their day job. And the fact that it was for an external customer for the health service, that kind of made a
Mm.
difference. I was fixing things for doctors, for nurses, for receptionists. It wasn't kind of internal IT use. So I quite like the external aspects of it, and I quite like the getting people back to work quickly aspect of it, and of course all the technical skills that I learned doing that.
Yeah. I think having the external client focus definitely helps. I think it makes it more tangible. You're making a bit more of a difference, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially as the health service as well, right? So I get it. Okay, so you're in the support role, work for health service. Where's your kind of career kind of go off from there?
So I went up the ranks in the support service and ended up as a technical lead, which is kind of
Hmm.
the senior technical person on the service, and that's another role I really enjoyed. It was kind of last point of contact before everything went pear shaped. Lots of responsibility, lots of coordinating different teams, and I really really enjoyed that. But I got an opportunity to move into change and config, which was a completely left field role for me. Um,
Yeah.
I kind of knew how to do it because I've been part of change and approvals and all the other good stuff that you do with that. Um, but yeah, I got an opportunity to do that. I got an opportunity to get off shift, which, to be honest, I quite wanted to go back to a Monday to Friday 9 to 5 ish. Um,
Okay.
so yeah, I applied for that and I managed to get that role.
And did you have to? I know you said you had some skills, but did you have to retrain in any way for that role?
I don't think it was retrain. I'd already done my ITIL version 2, I think, at that
Okay.
point. That's how long ago it
Hmm.
was. Um, so I don't think it was a case of retrain. I think it was just a case of refocus. So I've
Hmm.
now got the accountability throughout all these changes for the live service and for making them successful rather than just the technical aspects. So it was almost refocusing what I already knew and kind of um, having more of a governance function and a making sure it happens function rather than a doing function.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And then that eventually led you on to head of change management. Am I right in saying so?
Yeah, head of change and config for the health service. I did that
Okay.
for a few
Okay.
years.
Yeah, good. Okay. And then did that from being a head, I mean, when you say head, are we talking about management of individuals as well?
Yeah, I had a team of, I think, about 70 or 80 at one point, just doing change management and configuration management.
So team of 70 or 80, that's a large team. And I think everyone kind of adapts and has different traits as a manager. What would you say your traits were back then as a manager? And are they still the kind of same traits you have today?
Ooh, probably not the same traits I have today. I'm much more unprofessional nowadays. Um, I was very well. I guess I was lucky because I was very knowledgeable in the service that we were doing changing config on. So I kind of brought that aspect to the role. I think I was always very fair, always very people orientated, but always
Hmm.
very service focused. So I gave my team air cover to say no to something that may break the service. So I think I was very very supportive. Not that I'm not those things now, but I kind of refocused a little in my old age.
Okay, fair play. Let's talk about the current role because we spoke about you spoke about there about where you are today with that. How much have you changed from, or how much of your of experience comes into like management of people and how you've adapted to that from where you were as a head of change management initially?
Well, I think the biggest difference now is I kind of see the bigger picture, and
Mhm.
it's all about the people, having the right people, having good people, but also kind of developing people. The best thing about being a manager is seeing your team get promoted. That's a real kind of real feather in the cap for any line manager. And I think it's looking after people and making sure you get out of their way when needed. So being
Mm.
very supportive, but I always say to people, I've got a habit of employing people cleverer than me. Therefore, I try and get out of the way as much as possible because I
Yeah.
do employ some very, very good people, and my ideas are seldom the best. That's why I employ them. So I kind of get out of their way and support where needed. So it's more of a supportive role than a directive role. That's kind of the biggest change between 20 years ago and now.
Yeah, no, definitely, I get it. Okay, all right. I think I think that's a really good point you made around seeing the bigger picture. And like you say, I think the best managers I talk to realize even though they're a manager, it's not about them, it's about the team, right? And it's
Yeah.
about utilizing the skill sets of the team, because we don't have, like, not every individual has all the skill sets. So you need your team to have different skill sets to bring to the table in order for the team to flourish. And that's what good managers do, essentially. And that sounds exactly where you're at today, which is fantastic to hear. Let's talk a little bit more about the current role, because you're senior manager in governance and insights. Is that right?
Yep, that's right.
So what does that involve exactly? Talk me through that.
So my organisation is a large one, not people who work for me, but the wider organisation that I work in. And the way I can try and describe it is my job is to make sure the rest of the people have the frameworks, the knowledge, the skills, and the governance to do their jobs well.
Mm-hmm.
So I have various ITIL practices working for me, but it's basically continual improvement for the whole organisation. That's
Okay.
pretty much what I'm accountable for.
And then so your team now, what does that look like? What's the setup look like?
So I've got 94 people as of last count, and I've got a
Okay.
mixture of service level managers, supplier managers, people who do all our ISO audits, all our external certifications, continual improvement, um, business process analysis, procedure writing, process interface,
Mm-hmm.
um, kind of the glue that holds the organisation kind of together.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my role at the moment and my team's role.
Okay. And then you've been at BT for a whopping 35 years. That unheard of, seeing that amount of loyalty, and I think it's great to see that, because it's not something you see nowadays. So, I mean, what's kept you there for that many years? Obviously, you're happy they've looked after you, but talk me through some of the key points that ensures that they hold on to someone like you.
I think it's a few things, and it's kind of altered over the years. At the start, it was stability,
Hmm.
um, but it's kind of transformed into a little bit more than that. So it's a really really good place to work. It's a really supportive place to work. It's a very diverse place to work, which I really like. So I've got colleagues from all backgrounds and all over the world. Um, it's very people orientated. So we have a lot of surveys and action plans based on how our people are feeling, how I'm feeling, and it's very very big on personal development and learning. So I've done. You mentioned some of the certifications that I've got. That was all funded by BT,
Hmm.
um, and it the whole organisation is very very mindful that its people need development and want development and will fund that development and will give people time to learn. I think there's also an aspect of the kind of personal support. So there's a lot of personal support, mental health support available. It's just a very people orientated organisation, which I really like, and it's very enjoyable to work in.
Good. And you touched on, you mentioned surveys and asking how you're feeling. You touched on it about mental health. Let's talk a little bit about it, because I know we've discussed it when we had our pre-call, but talk me through how that's helped you, particularly Sean, um, through your mental health working within IT and BT.
Okay, well I think there's been a big sea change, not just in kind of the industry, but in the world on mental health. And I think it was very much always seen as a bit of a stigma.
Hmm.
Um, and I've had issues in the past for a number of years, and I kept them hidden for a long, long, long time, um, because I knew what reception I'd get, and the issues that I've had, it doesn't define me. But you kind of get put into a bit of a box, and I've been called a lot of different things over the years, which I won't go into on this call, because I've hidden what was actually the problem. Um, I think the biggest turning point was a few years ago, and I kind of blurted out to my boss at the time, "I'm not okay," because I wasn't. I was having a really
Hmm.
really tough time, um, and that was probably the best thing I ever did, because the support I got was absolutely tremendous, absolutely tremendous. Um, so fast forward to today, in a far far better place. Um, People certainly in my work know that I've had issues and know that I continue to have issues. but I feel comfortable to talk about it, which I think is a good thing because hopefully other people will then feel comfortable to talk about it.
Yeah.
I'm on the right medication, which took a lot of years to get right, but you
Hmm.
know what? I can happily do day job. Sometimes I have issues with background noise and various other things which people are completely aware of. But the fact that it's out in the open, the fact that people are talking about it is absolutely fantastic because bottling it up really is hard. Really,
Yeah.
really is hard.
And you mentioned that. I think you said you kind of like blurted it out. You know, did it kind of get to a boiling point where you had to let it out? Was that what it was, or what was it exactly that? Because it sounds like years in like there's years of you that are holding it back, and like yeah, what I'm intrigued to know. Sorry.
I think it was a couple of things. I think certainly wasn't a boiling point where I just had to tell someone. It didn't get to
Mm,
that point. I think the conversations, it goes back to the point we mentioned about people earlier and how
mm,
management has changed or managers have changed. And the conversation that I was having at the time wasn't about my productivity or my objectives. It was about how are you?
mm,
And that it felt like a safe space to say, I'm not well.
mm,
So I think the narrative and the kind of the conversations, the language has changed, and asking how someone is very, very valuable. In the UK, we say, "Yeah, I'm fine,"
yeah.
but actually, asking how someone really is very powerful. And if you give people that kind of that open that door a little bit and allow
Hmm.
them through, then the conversations take on a whole new meaning, and people can get the support that they need.
What would you say to someone? I mean, that's really really powerful what you're saying there, and I really like it. And I'm just thinking of other individuals that are feeling like what you were feeling, and let's say that they're not being asked, "How are you?" What do you say to those individuals? Like, how can they help themselves?
It's quite difficult. I mean, if they're not being asked, then that's one of two things: either the manager is unaware that they should be asking these questions,
Mm,
or worst case scenario doesn't care. But I don't believe there are many, if any, people in any industry that don't care about their people.
yeah.
So I think from a that organisation perspective, I would say let's get some training. Let's get in BT. We have a lot of mental health training. I'm actually doing a full day course on Thursday for it, and it's vital that you equip your managers with the skills to ask those questions because it's not easy. And I know from personal experience as a line manager, I'm asking these questions when in the background I know the answer for me, and it's not a good answer.
Yeah.
So it's not. It's. I would say train your line managers in having these conversations. They don't need to be full on psychotherapists. There's support available for that, but
Hmm.
just the skills to ask those questions. I would say for the individual, if there's no support available in the workplace, then go and see your GP. A lot of GPs have, mine certainly does, has mental health nurses, dedicated mental
Mm,
health nurses who I see regularly when I'm having issues, and they're absolutely fantastic, completely non-judgmental, and it's a really good place to get help and get the support in place that you need, be that mindfulness or medication, whatever it may be. But it's a real good, safe space to talk with somebody who's is clinically trained in doing these sort of things.
yeah. No, I agree. And anyone who is listening, if you're unsure, please go and talk to your GP. You know, talk to someone at least, right? That's what I would say. And you mentioned BT were very supportive, and you mentioned they're doing mental health training. What other kind of key things do BT or other organisations do now to help with mental health for their employees?
Um, so there's the training that I've mentioned.
Hmm.
There's also the senior leadership team talking about these things. It's not kind of an individual thing anymore. Um, I think there's also certainly in BT there's lots of support available online. There's counselling. There's a number you can ring for support. There's you can go onto mindfulness pathways where you can kind of guide yourself through to the outcome. There's training on resilience. But I think the biggest thing is the the awareness of people at all levels that everyone's different. And I think in a well, I think in any organisation we have objectives, we have things that we need to do, and there's a real fine line between pressure and stress. And I
Hmm.
think a lot of organisations, BT included, kind of understand that there is that line. And
Yeah.
if my team are under pressure for a long time, it turns into stress, and then it doesn't go well. So
Mm.
it takes courage to say, I'm too busy. I can't do all your objectives or all the things you've asked me to do. It takes courage to do that, but it's absolutely important that you do it. And as leaders, it's absolutely important that we take that on board, because the flip side of helping with the stress is we can also cause it, which you've got to be mindful that you're not doing that, because it's very, very, very counterproductive.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. No, I agree. So you've now been open and spoken about mental health, and you've suffered from mental health. Doing that, where does that take you today? Are you in the right place where you want to be, or are you still working to I don't know a key goal or objective, or where you want to actually get to with your mental health?
It's a really good question. I'm not sure, to be honest. At the moment,
Okay,
if you asked me if I were okay, I would say yes, and that would be an honest answer.
good.
Um, there are times when um, I still get anxious, regardless of the
Hmm.
medication, but that's normal anxious. Like before recording this, that was a little bit of anxiety. But the fact that I recognize it means I can manage it, and it's not the end of the world. It's there are small situations where I feel pressure, and I can manage that pressure. And if it gets too much, then I will talk to someone and say this is too much, either my mental health nurse or my boss or my team or whatever it may be. Um, so I'm not sure if I am where I need to be, because I don't
Hmm.
quite know what that looks like. I've never really seen it. But at the moment, I'm content with how things are going. I'm happy to talk about things like this. Um, and I'm doing okay at work, and I'm doing okay at home. So I'm in a much better place than I was, and I'm content with how things are going.
Good, good. I mean, look, I think it's really brave that you're being open and talking about it, because not everyone is, right? I still think there is a little bit of stigma. People are afraid to talk about it. People are afraid to admit to it, and I think we need more people like you that are open to talking about mental health, and just being open and honest about it. And sometimes it is a case of, like you mentioned there, it's learning how to kind of manage a certain situation. Like you said, even just jumping on this podcast beforehand, you were a little bit anxious, right?
Mm.
Do you know what? I think I've recorded about 20 of these. I'm still a little bit anxious. I'm like, I want to make sure I deliver it. I deliver it correctly. So I think there's that always that kind of like a little bit of anxiety in us before, but I think with a little bit of experience that comes with knowing how to manage that.
Does.
Um, yeah, definitely. So I really appreciate it. There was I don't know if you remember, there was another gentleman I had on the podcast previously called Daniel Breston, who also spoke very vividly about mental health in IT. You know Daniel?
I know Daniel very well.
Good.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Yeah, we've had a
and
lot of discussions along those lines.
Yeah, so obviously he made me. Oh, he didn't make me, but he asked me to watch a video which was of Norwich City Football Club put together. Have you seen that video? Yeah,
Have,
and it
yeah.
really hit home. It was about someone not talking effectively, and the other individual cheering away, and everyone thought it was one person that had the issue, but it was the other individual, and that really hit home to me. I suppose because of that, it's made me a little bit more conscious around the people that I'm around all the time. Like, are there any other like telltale signs for you where maybe someone's suffering with mental health, where we can like look out and spot things like that?
It differs for individuals, I think. Um, so for a lot of years, I wore a very smiley mask, and
Okay.
no one spotted a thing. Um, so I think you can get very good at hiding it, but it gets hard. I think little things like not performing at work, or if you're usually vocal when you're on a Teams call, for example, all of a sudden you're quiet, or you give one-word answers,
Mm,
or you kind of make excuses for not interacting by saying I'm really, really busy, and they might be really busy, and all of that might be absolutely true. But asking them how are you on the back of that, on the back of those subtle changes, I think is vitally important. I think as as managers or just as kind of friends on a team, I'm not sure you can go too far into that because you might be jumping to conclusions, and the majority of us are untrained in these things. But I
Yeah.
think asking how someone is, that doesn't require training, and it might be that they are really busy, but it might be that actually they're too busy or there's something else going on. And if people don't want to talk about it, then that's absolutely fine. But just
Yeah.
giving them that opportunity to talk about it should they wish to do so. But
Yeah.
it can be really hard to spot.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So it's more a case of just asking how someone is, and hopefully they will, when they're ready, talk to you about a scenario if they feel like they need to.
Yeah, just build up that relationship. Make sure that they know it's going to be absolutely non-judgmental and completely about them, which
Yeah.
is difficult
Okay.
to do. That takes a lot of time and a lot of kind of conversations to get to know someone that well.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Before we, before we move on from talking about mental health, are there any other kind of like key takeaways that's worth mentioning at all from your side?
Um, I think one thing that I found really helps is mindfulness. And not a lot of people kind of know what mindfulness is. I nodded and smiled when people mentioned mindfulness because I thought I knew what it was, and it wasn't. But I find it really, really helpful. So um, at night, going to sleep, I listen to a kind of 6 minute mindfulness exercise. Um, if I'm having a really busy morning, then at lunchtime, I listen to a 3 minute bit of mindfulness. It's called a comma in the day, and it just resets my brain. I can put the morning to one side. It's happened. There's nothing I can do about it, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. And then I can crack on with the afternoon. So just taking that pause. There's an app called Smiling Mind that I use, which is an Australian app, and I find there's lots of those mindfulnesses are specific. Like the comma in the day is for people who've had a busy morning or a stressful
Hmm.
morning, and I find that really, really helps. It really kind of resets your brain and gets you to focus on what's important, even for like 2, 3 minutes.
But what are you actually listening to, Sean? I've never listened to anything like that. What is it exactly?
So it's a lady or a man on depending on your preference. They've recorded both, speaking you through things like breathing exercises,
Okay.
um, relaxed body position, whether that's sitting or laying down. There's a phrase in the one that I listen to in the evening, and the lady says, "There's nothing else for you to do, and there's nowhere else you need to be right now." Which that's very relaxing. You've got your brain's
Mm,
going wild after a day at work or a day not at work, and that one sentence is very relaxing. She's absolutely right. I don't need to do anything, and there's nowhere else I need to be right now.
yeah.
And that kind
Yeah.
of it really, really calms me down.
Really interesting hearing you say that. So do you listen to these a couple of times a day? Then would you say?
Not every day.
No, every day. Okay.
Not every day. Sometimes I'll be so tired I just fall asleep, or
Yeah.
I'll I, wa- it, I it's difficult to kind of um, or it's a skill to understand when you need a bit of downtime, a bit of relaxation, because we're all running
Mhm.
24/7. Um, but if I've had a decent morning or a really productive morning or a happy morning, I've been doing something like this, then I probably won't think about it at lunchtime. But I do know when I've had a really busy or really stressful morning, it triggers my brain to go, right, Sean, you need to just reset. It'll take
Yeah.
3 minutes. You just need to reset. So not
Yeah.
every day, not twice a day, but when I think it's necessary. And
When
the
it's
key is
necessary.
understanding when it's necessary
Okay.
or when
Good.
it'll
Really.
help.
And so, just a reminder, in case anyone's listening, they want to download the app. It's called Smiling Mind. Is that right?
It's called Smiling Mind. Highly
Okay.
recommended.
Good, good. Okay. Look, we spoke quite in depth there about mental health, so thank you for sharing your experience with that. I want to talk about something that you're quite passionate about, which is XLAs,
Mm,
experience level agreements, and where are you with that and your experience with that? It'd be really interesting to hear. I think you know Alan Nance, who I had on, who's a bit of an expert in that area. So
a bit of an
interested to hear.
expert.
Yeah. So interested to hear your thoughts on XLAs, if you can.
Yeah, no problem. So I came across XLAs on a podcast, I think,
Okay.
on the back of a Twitter post about 3 or 4 years ago.
Hmm.
And I had no idea what they were, but it sounded really interesting, kind of coming at service management from a user perspective. And I did a little bit of research, and then I got in touch with a guy called Neil Keating who works for Brighthorse. Is Brighthorse, and I did some education or did some training on this, and it just made sense. It absolutely made sense. I know Alan was on this podcast talking about the experience economy and the very, very clever kind of things that he's come up with. But I think for me, it was a bit more basic than that. It was very, of course, we should make sure that the services that we provide hit the mark, not just from a service level agreement, uptime, downtime, fixed time perspective, but do they actually do the things that our customers want to do?
Mm.
And XLAs are a way of gauging that and a way of measuring that. And I found that really, really interesting because ultimately, everyone in the IT service management industry is there to provide solutions, whatever they may be, to people to make their lives easier, better, faster. And XLAs are a way of measuring whether we do that. It's not implied. We imply that 100% uptime makes people more productive. Actually, it's not explicit. And I found XLAs really interesting because they make that link between the service that is provided and the usage of that service and making sure it does make people more productive, better, faster, happier.
Hmm. And then, what have you done to implement that within BT and the impact that's had?
Um, so the XLA industry, if I can call it that, is very much in its infancy.
Hmm.
There are lots of thoughts and lots of solutions out there. I think from my perspective, I have a raft of very, very different customers, which makes scalability quite difficult. So I've implemented XLAs on a couple of customers, and the feedback that we got from that was very, very, I'm not going to say good or bad, it was very useful.
Okay.
It gave us a balanced view of reality, and some things that they fed back to us were really, really good, but I didn't know about them.
Hmm.
So that led to thank yous to a bunch of people and a bunch of teams. And there were things that we could have done better that we wouldn't have known about. And it's made certainly me look at what we provide in a different way, very much more customer centric. I ceased to be a techie years ago. It's all about the experience, the user experience. So it's almost a mindset shift. Um, but the plan now is to roll out across a whole bunch of other different customers, completely different to the ones we've done before, um,
Hmm.
because we want that feedback. I think a big difference that I'm finding today, as opposed to when we started this a year or so ago, is there's much more knowledge about what XLAs are.
Hmm.
When I first started, everybody thought because it's got the word agreement in it must be a contractual commitment, and
Yeah.
actually that would be very counterproductive. If British Gas rang me up and said, "How happy are you with your gas supply? And if you give me a bad score, I'm going to halve your bill. What do you think I'm going to do?" So, there was a lot of kind of misinformation. But the fact that a lot of customers now see them as an improvement tool, which is exactly what they are,
Yeah.
and the fact that an organisation and its service provider show the will to work together to make things better for the people who matter, the people using the solutions. Um, I think it's changed a lot of the conversations. It's changed a lot of the dialogue. And from the conversations that I'm having at the moment, they're less about contract negotiation and more about collaboration. And that I really, really like that. I think that's the way the whole industry should go. And I think that's the way the whole industry is going. We all
Yeah.
focus
Okay.
on the same things.
Yeah, 100%. Go back, just rewind a little bit. You mentioned obviously it was useful getting good and bad kind of feedback from your clients. I don't need you to name the clients, but can you share some examples of some of the bad kind of feedback you received or the useful stuff you received? Let's not call it bad. That that were like a real key takeaway from you that maybe you weren't aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so you're right. I'm not going to name the organisation, but I use the same organisation for both because they did give us both positive and negative. And you can call it good and bad. It is good and bad. That's
Okay.
absolutely fine.
Yeah.
For me, it's
Yeah.
useful. Um, so one thing positive that came back is the client was far happier interacting with my organisation when somebody actually went to site.
Okay.
which was very, very interesting. That doesn't show up in any metrics, any uptime, downtime, fixed time. And you're certainly not going to call the service desk to say, by the way, I'm really happy an engineers visited and I wasn't happy when they didn't. So that
Yeah.
was really valuable feedback for the engineers. So we could give them a pat on the back and say, well done, whatever you're doing, keep doing what you're doing. A bit of negative feedback that we got was there was a lack of communication on a large migration, and some of the end user sites were having short notice of when the downtime was going to be. And that was a really, really quick fix, but we wouldn't have known about it. No one raises an incident because we know it's happening. No one contacts the service desk to say, I wish you'd have told me that sooner. So it gave the customers that opportunity and that feedback loop to say, actually, the service is great and it's very reliable and very fast and very all the other good things, but actually you could do this better. And so that was a simple tweak to a project plan, increasing the lead times for communications. Everyone was happy, but without XLAs, we wouldn't have known that. And it's those moments that make a difference. It turns a good service into a great service and a great experience. So that was really
Definitely.
valuable feedback.
Just on that point, Sean, you mentioned there increasing the lead times on communication. So what actually changed? Like, is it more a case of like more regular contact, or what changed for you in that circumstance?
It was a couple of things. It was more regular contact. It was contact far in advance of when people needed to know something was happening, and it was better planning. So we knew we got to migrate all these sites. I don't know how many hundreds there were, all these hundreds of sites, and let's get them all planned. Let's get them all in the diary. Let's get the communication out so everyone knows what's happening when.
Yeah,
And let's do that in advance enough to people to make a contingency. And it was as simple as that. A bit planning a little bit further forward. Wasn't a
Do you
difficult
think?
fix, but really important.
Yeah, but do you think sometimes you can overplan?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So does that not get in the way of this then, from an XLA perspective?
No, I don't think so. I think if plans change, then the key on this was the communication
Okay.
and giving people enough notice to react. And that was the key. If the plans change, then that doesn't change the fact that you need to communicate and you need to do that in advance.
Yeah.
So
No,
yeah,
definitely.
I'm not a fan of glorious 3-year plans because you spend more time doing slides than you do actually
Yeah.
executing the plans.
Exactly. Okay, that's why I asked the question. And you mentioned earlier that the good point that came out of it was they were much happier when someone was on site and they had that kind of dialogue on site. How often do you have someone on site with that customer that they are happy? Is it weekly? Is it more often? Talk me through it.
It's whenever something goes wrong that we can't mend remotely.
Okay. Okay.
It literally is that basic.
Okay. All right. And then it took that communication for you to realize, obviously, that was the right thing that you guys were doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we
Okay.
need to thank the guys. And I think it also shows that there's a lot of talk in the industry about AI and service desk, and is one going to become the other? And actually, I think what we've just talked about just shows that human to human interaction is
Definitely.
absolutely vital for experience. You
Yeah.
can't, at the moment, you can't replicate that.
Yeah. I agree. You touched on AI. I wasn't going to bring AI up, but you touched on it. But I suppose it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on AI, the impact or the potential impact it's going to have on your area.
Ooh, that's a really good question. Um, so, from a personal perspective, I find AI and the possibilities of AI quite exciting.
Hmm.
Um, the way I see it at the moment, because we've just talked about kind of service empathy and human to human contact, I think it will help to facilitate more of that. I think the way that I see AI, and I'm not an expert in artificial intelligence by any stretch of the imagination, but I kind of see its potential in some areas and its usage in some areas. I think it will do a lot to remove the mundane. I think it will do a lot to speed things up, which if you're a customer with an issue or a query or a service request, we're very, as a society, we're very app driven. We want something immediately. It takes me more than 2 minutes to download an app and I'm getting impatient. Remember when you had to walk to the shop and buy a disc?
I know. Tell me
Um,
about it.
indeed. So I think it will speed up those interactions, and I think it will free up people to do um, more human things with their time. A lot of
Hmm.
service management is spent firefighting, resolving issues, but actually there's so much more we can do: service improvement, continual improvement, having those conversations with customers about their wants and needs. So I think it will help. I think if I'm being perfectly realistic, there will be in some cases casualties, because there always is. Right from the industrial revolution right to today, automation does make things more efficient, but I'm really excited about it. I think it'll really help, and I think it'll open up a whole new raft of possibilities. Everybody, we touched on this earlier. Everybody you speak to in this industry is really busy,
Yeah.
and if, for example, when I'm writing, I tend to use AI to help me with the words. The content's
Hmm.
mine, but it's far better at wordsmithing than I am, and that saves me time. And I can either choose to fill that time with the work that's been sat there not done for a long time, or I can use it for thinking time.
Yeah.
I can strategize. I can do things like this. I can speak to you.
Hmm.
It
Hmm.
kind of gives me that time back. So yeah, I think that the implications are as yet unknown, but I don't think they. Um, I mean, AI anxiety is real, but I don't think it's doom and gloom. I don't think it's AI is going to take my job, because it will probably make your job far more interesting.
Yeah, I think like you've touched on earlier, I think just having that human touch is still massively needed, especially in the service world. And going back to your examples there, where customers still like someone on site,
Mm,
AI can't replace that, right? So even though it's here to stay, and I also use it for giving me content ideas,
yeah,
and putting together I suppose, content, but in my language. It's great for that. Like I say, it eradicates time that I would need to put into that and gives me time to do other things. So I get why it's here, and I like it for that purpose. But yeah, in the service industry, I think we are still massively geared towards the human touch and having that human touch. So I
absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
I
100%.
think one of the
Just
other things that
go on.
I was sat at someone's desk when I was in the office earlier last week, and in this industry, we're very kind of guarded about things that we don't know, and we're very very acronym heavy.
Mm,
And I think what I found is, if I'm sat on a call nodding and smiling at an acronym that I don't understand, pretending that I do, then
okay.
I can go into my friendly generative AI, explain whatever it is, explain um, ADSL to me like I'm five, and it will do that. And then all of a sudden, I'm
Mm,
knowledgeable. That's not cheating. That's somebody kind of going away to the library of the internet and giving me a very basic answer in a language that I understand. So I can then input into the call better, rather than kind of sat there feeling inadequate, thinking everyone else is nodding and smiling. Do they all know something I don't? Because we're not
yeah.
very good at saying I don't understand what that is.
Mm.
So I think it really helped, just at the very basic levels. Things like that I think really help.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. That's a really good example you gave there. Just going back about XLAs, if there's an organization out there listening that hasn't implemented XLAs, what's a good starting point for them? What's your advice and guidance on what you experienced?
Um, there's lots of information out there. My first step I would say is understand what they are, but also, and probably more importantly, understand what they are not.
Hmm.
They're not a replacement for CSAT surveys. They're not a replacement for um, Net Promoter Score, and they are certainly not a replacement for service level agreements.
Yeah.
So I think the first point is understand what they are, understand what they are not, and do that properly, rather than kind of guessing, well, it's XLA, it must be a replacement for SLA, because I hear that
Mm.
a lot. I think education is key on how to build out XLAs. So there's various organisations, Brighthorse being one, who will They do an essentials and a foundation and a practitioner. So you can be certified in XLAs now, the same as ITIL or Prince. It kind of gives you the knowledge and the skill to go away and do the doing.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably one of the most important things is understanding what you provide as an organization and how valuable it is or not to your end user community, because ultimately that they're the ones that XLAs will help. So if you work in an organization where, let's say, you're an internal service desk or an internal IT service management team,
Mm-hmm.
and the IT that you provide is kind of basic laptop and phone, and it doesn't affect anyone's productivity because they turn it on at the end of the day or whatever it may be, then maybe a full-blown XLA implementation isn't for you. On the flip side, XLAs can be used for non-IT. They can be used for various kind of trades. So I would say education, understand what they are and what they aren't to decide whether they're right for you and your organization, and understand what you're trying to get out of it. Because if you know what the end is, then you can kind of work towards it. And it might be there for you. It might be that actually a simple survey with no other data is good enough for your organization.
Yeah, with you. And you mentioned it can be used in non-IT. Are we talking about essentially any customer service type environment that's got users, right? I would have thought.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Alan uses a really good analogy of a restaurant. I'm not going to try and replicate it on this call because I won't do it justice. But there are various data points in a restaurant, and there's a feeling of how it was for you in a restaurant. You put those
Mm,
data together, it gives you the experience, and that's
mm.
absolutely nothing to do with IT. So yeah, it's about the experience of interacting with a service provider, and that service provider could be a laptop, it could be a plate of lasagna.
Yeah, yeah. With you. Okay, okay. Before we move on from XLAs, any kind of like other kind of key takeaways that's worth mentioning?
No, I actually can't think of any. I've gone blank, Con.
Don't worry, it's not a
We'll edit
problem
that
at
bit
all.
out.
No, don't worry. I wanted to touch on your member chair for the ITSMF for London and South. What does that involve exactly, and how did you get into that?
Um, I when I got the last job, I got the practice and control specialist. One of the things that I thought was I've been at BT a long time, and it's all a little bit insular. So what's happening in the big wide world?
Hmm.
And I wasn't even on LinkedIn at the time. That's
Okay,
how kind
it's
of
interesting.
isolated I was. I joined LinkedIn that day, and a friend of mine arranged a call with the general manager of ITSMF because BT were a member organisation of it, but I knew nothing. So
Hmm.
best way, let's pick up the phone and have a chat. And we were talking about how to get the latest trends from in IT service management. What's hot? What should I implement? And the answer was directly social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, etc., etc. And I wasn't on any of these things.
Mm.
So that's kind of started my looking at the wider world and LinkedIn, and interacting with people like you and Alan and Daniel, etc. That's how it started. I think in terms of the member chair, so I kept interacting with the ITSMF. I did. Um, I was attending sessions, and um, I got a call saying, "Would you like to join our team? Would you like to be a member chair?" And what that involves is we arrange member meetups. So they can be online or face to face. We will choose a
Mm.
topic or get suggested a topic, and our members are they join it. It might be a one-way presentation, chalk and talk. It might be an interactive session or a full-day workshop on a certain subject. But its aim is to um, share and learn knowledge as a community, regardless of the name of the organization on your payslip. Just bring people together, like-minded individuals in an industry, and discuss and move forward various topics. So it's
Yeah,
almost a kind of a bringing people together type role.
yeah. I like what you said there about share and learn knowledge. I agree with that. It sounds like a the right type of networking group for individuals within the IT
Mm.
service management industry to do so. I was intrigued to hear that you wasn't on LinkedIn up to that point, and also maybe social media. And I'm guessing some of your previous kind of like anxiety issues were maybe behind that. Um, how did you overcome that? That'd be interesting to know. Um, and not everyone likes social media, right? So, um, you know, do you? How are you now regularly trying to keep up to date with social media and utilizing it for best practice?
Um, well, the app I spend most of my time on social media is LinkedIn
Hmm.
because I like reading the articles, I like watching the videos, the signposts to all the events that I like to attend are all on there. And there's some really good discussion. I particularly like the when you get a link saying you're an expert in this, would you like to answer? I quite
Yeah.
like answering those.
Hmm.
Not that I'm an expert, but my opinion is as valid as anyone else's.
100%.
So I do quite like that interaction. It's not really a social interaction; it's more a professional interaction.
Mm.
Um, but I do spend some time on there, um, kind of interacting with individuals and giving my opinion on a subject and seeing counterpoints develop, which is very, very interesting because it's all done in a really friendly way.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Okay, and so you're comfortable with it. What about just do you ever talk personal on there, or is it always professional?
Um, it depends who it is. In the indirect messages, then it's quite. I'm not going to say unprofessional, but that's more generally more personal.
Yeah,
Um, I don't tend to post to everyone on the back of a post with something personal, unless it's something like maybe somebody's leaving or retiring who I've known in the past who I work with. Then that will be a personal message. It will be nothing to do with work. Um, but I don't think many people tend to kind of socially interact on there in that way. I think that's more Facebook's territory.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, personal when a personal thing is needed, but very very rarely.
The reason I asked that is because I've noticed a slight change that a lot of people are utilizing it for talking about what happened at the weekend or stuff like that. And there is a bit more of I noticed a personal element come into people's posts rather than it just being purely professional business posts all the time. I think, and LinkedIn encourages that now. I think they want, I suppose, their community to see there is a personal side to the individual, not just a pure business professional side.
Okay,
That's what I've noticed, and speaking to some of my colleagues in the recruitment industry, they say the same actually, and that's why I asked the question. But have you not noticed that at all? Maybe a few more personal
I
posts
have to
coming
be
through?
honest. I haven't
No.
noticed it. Genuinely, I'm going to look out for it now. Though that'd be interesting to see.
Okay, well, bear that in mind next time you're having a look through.
I will do.
Whilst we're still on talking about personal, I always like to find out a little bit about my guests from a personal perspective. You know, whether you have a family life, whether you have hobbies, what you get up to outside of the workplace. Talk me through it, Sean.
Okay, so I'm married to a nurse in the NHS. I've got two children, 9 and 4. You asked me about hobbies. I'll answer that with I've got two children, 9 and 4.
That answer I completely get because I've got 3 kids, so I
Yep,
do get it.
absolutely, absolutely. So I live in a little seaside village in Norfolk. I enjoy walking around the countryside of Norfolk. It's very, very pleasant here. Um, I am a massive cricket fan.
Yeah.
August is a good month for me because the 100 is on. Um, but I am a massive cricket fan. I watch it whenever I get the opportunity away from work. Um, I spend a lot of time ferrying my 9-year-old boy to cricket matches and football matches. He plays for the local cricket team and the local football team, so I spend a lot of time doing that, and that's my live cricket fix. Watching a bunch of under 9 smack a hard ball very very far.
I'm guessing. I'm not a cricket fan, so I can't say that I have the same passion that you do. My passion is football. Is that a cricket top you're wearing?
It is. It's the England T20 2020 top.
Okay, nice. Okay, all right. I'd love to say I know more about it, but I don't. So, but yes, thank you for sharing your passion with me. Look, we are coming towards the end of the podcast. I always I'd like to just try and throw a question out there around maybe some of the challenges that is happening in the IT service management industry, and maybe some of the, what does the future look like in IT service management? Is it going to differ in the next 5 to 10 years? It'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that, Sean.
Yeah, I think it is going. Well, I think it's already differing. I think it's veering in a direction. I think it will differ in the next 5 to 10 years. I think um, I think the empathetic skills and the human skills will come into it far more. I think the
Yeah.
focus will continue to shift away from service into experience. I know we've discussed that earlier, and I think a few of the
Hmm.
other guests have discussed that. Um, I think the skill set needed will move a little. I'm not going to say be completely different, but I think it will move a little. And I think we will measure success in a little bit of a different way. I think things like service level agreements will cease to become um, cease to be the be all and end all. And I think we'll move more to experience metrics and how we measure our success. Um, so I think that's the kind of shift in that's the shift that I see anyway.
Okay, it's good. I like it. I like the shifts. Okay. Look, we've come to the end now. I really appreciate you being very honest, talking about your t- issues that you've had in mental health. With mental health. Like I said earlier on, it's very brave of you, and not everyone does it. And we need more people like you to do that. So I want to thank you for sharing that, but also just generally around, talking through your history and some decisions you made, and loved hearing about what you've been doing with XLAs and some of the pros and cons of XLAs as well. Any kind of like last kind of key takeaway that you want to mention at all?
I think the last thing I'll say, I'll go back to the mental health thing. If one person picks up the phone to say I'm not okay after hearing this, I think we should both be very proud of that. So yeah, get help if you need it.
No, definitely. Thank you. Well, listen, thanks for coming online and doing the podcast with me. Love to have you on in the future if we can, if that's okay, Sean.
Yep, no problem.
Good.
Anytime.
All right. No problem at all. Well, listen, thank you very much, and I'll see you soon.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.